Hello everyone and welcome to my channel Clarkspective. Two sides of the internet have been debating this issue for the past 2 years, and four numbers suddenly came to light. $528,000, $574,000, $493,000, and $350,000. These numbers were not found in any social media survey. They weren't produced by any ESPN discussion program. No podcast take, no viral moment, no fan vote. 2 years of confirmed professional production across several players were processed by a formula performance algorithm under a collective bargaining agreement, which then applied a set of mutually agreed-upon contractual circumstances and printed those four figures on an official salary document. And as soon as that document became public, Angel Reese's answer made it clear to all sponsors, league executives, and brands that are currently assessing women's basketball how she responds to signals from the market that she doesn't like. The salary disparity between Caitlin Clark and Angel Reese is not the tale that everyone is making it out to be, so you must comprehend the mechanism before we can respond. One symptom is the gap. The system that generated the story is the story itself. And the whole discourse surrounding these two players completely shifts once you comprehend how that system really works. The majority of journalists covering this topic haven't taken the time to thoroughly explain a clause hidden inside the new WNBA collective bargaining agreement. Your social media following is irrelevant to it. The number of times your name trended on Twitter is not taken into account. If you appreciate this content, consider giving this video a like and subscribing to the channel. Believe it or not, more than 85% of viewers haven't subscribed yet. It's free and only takes a second, but it means the world to us. So, did you subscribe already? Great. Thank you so much for your support. Now, back to the video. It doesn't react to viral events, public pressure campaigns, or the player that the algorithm chose to promote that week. It directly and solely links the value of your contract to all of your certified WNBA production during the rookie contract timeframe. That clause was activated by Clark. Reese didn't. The $178,000 basic salary discrepancy can be fully explained mathematically by that. The more you get how it operates, the more difficult it is to look at Reese's public response and take any aspect of it seriously. The exceptional performance clause on the original contract is known as the EPIC clause. It was included as a performance-based accelerator in the updated CBA. The WNBA's wage structure was criticized for years for failing to fairly compensate players who entered the league and produced at an elite level right away. Regardless of productivity, everyone advanced at about the same rate under the previous system. A woman who made 3 All-WNBA teams in her first 4 seasons was earning about the same amount of money as a player who did nothing but remain on the roster. The EPIC clause was intended to address such issue. There is no opportunity for interpretation because the threshold is unambiguous. The league puts you on an expedited road toward maximum contract eligibility if you receive All-WNBA honors throughout your first 3 professional seasons. You advance through the pay system more quickly than the typical schedule permits. The wording is purposefully designed to reward observable performance rather than potential, college reputation, or draft position alone. Production at the professional level was verified by the selection committee and was documented. In her inaugural season, Clark was named to the first team of the WNBA. The clause was activated just 1 year into her career. Everything the formula required was present. The acceleration started right away. It's crucial to note that this clause has benefited other players beside Clark. One name is not the foundation of the system. The proof that completely eliminates any discussion of favoritism is Aaliyah Boston. The statistic that deserves greater attention in this conversation is Boston's contract jump, which shows how the clause works on an entirely different player profile under quite different circumstances and achieves precisely the outcome that the CBA architects wanted. Her income dropped from $94,000 to $574,000. In any traditional definition of the word, that is not a rise. Her entire professional value has been formally contractually reclassified based on 2 seasons of verified, documented production. Her 2 professional seasons were back-to-back All-WNBA choices, and her two-way influence completely changed the way Indiana plays on both sides of the court. The defensive coverages opponents had to use were altered by her presence. The offensive post-entry angles were altered. Every team in the league had to take into consideration the altered rebounding dynamics when planning a matchup versus Indiana. Those choices are not taken lightly by the selection committee. All of the league's production measures are being assessed concurrently. The clause was activated and reflected in the pay deal after Boston won consecutive All-WNBA selections. Between $94,000 and $574,000. The system functions just as planned by its inventors. The argument that the system is rigged or that it favors Clark in particular vanishes the instant you place Boston's number on the table next to it, which makes that context crucial when examining where Reese ended up. There is no preferred name for the clause. It has a production threshold, which it applies consistently to each player it assesses. In the 2024 draft, Reese was selected 7th overall. She found that draft position to be really effective right away. It increased her pay from $75,000 as a rookie to $350,000, placing her above the standard compensation floor. In the WNBA's new format, draft slots are important, and her place in that draft offered her a significant advantage over players chosen later. However, this is the limit of the draft slot. You are carried till a particular point, at which point it stops. The Epic Clause Road, the second accelerator, demands all WNBA honors. That requirement is not met by the draft slot. Performance does. Furthermore, Reese has not been selected to any level of the WNBA during his 2 complete professional seasons, neither the second squad nor the third team. That is not a description found in the media. That is a choice made by the selection committee, which uses a predetermined set of criteria to assess production numbers for each player in the league. It is their responsibility to determine which players had the best performances that season. Reese hasn't been named by the committee as one of those guys despite playing professional basketball for 2 whole seasons. For those in the Reese camp who wish to portray this as an outsider problem or a tale of Clark favoritism, this is where the salary sheet truly becomes uncomfortable. The second overall choice in that same 2024 draft class, Cameron Brink, is currently valued at $493,000. The third overall pick in that same class, Sonia Kitchell, is valued at $436,000. Reese, who was chosen 7th overall, is worth $350,000 less than both of them. Her income is not keeping up with her own draft class. After the same amount of professional experience, players chosen ahead of her in the same draft have moved up the contract ladder. The same week that Reese made the decision to speak out most about the difference between her and Clark's numbers, that information became public. Her argument was not strengthened by the timing. It really undercut it. You need to look beyond the new CBA to comprehend how 2 players who entered the professional league in different draft classes ended up with such drastically divergent income trajectories after only a brief period of professional service. Since the divergence did not originate in a contract negotiation room, you must return to the original location. Anyone who paid enough attention could see that it began in college. Before Clark even set foot in a WNBA facility, scouts had been evaluating her playmaking characteristics and statistics for years. Her output during her time in college wasn't just for show. The way defenses organized their game plans at the national level was altered by a particular type of offensive orchestration. Teams weren't merely attempting to prevent Clark from scoring. They were attempting to figure out a playmaking mechanism that simultaneously improved everyone in her immediate vicinity. It requires a different level of game plan building than most college players ever produce, and it's a new problem to defend against. She didn't enter the WNBA she went out and professionally documented a completely new production. Assist, scoring, and playmaking efficiency records for rookies. First-year All-WNBA team. An excellent choice. A berth on the Team USA roster where she is directly comparable to the top players in the world, not merely the top players in the league, due to her assist efficiency and scoring production. Each and every one of those milestones was monitored, confirmed, recorded, and ultimately incorporated into a contract formula that solely considers what you actually achieved on the floor. The narrative of Reese's first 2 professional seasons was significantly different. The headline was improving. On the surface, the box score totals appeared significant, and she was capturing boards at rates that attracted attention. However, the picture immediately became more nuanced when experts dug deeper into the underlying facts. Her own failed field goal attempts accounted for a sizable chunk of her offensive rebound totals. She had an overall field goal percentage of 39% in the second season. When she was within 5 feet of the basket, her conversion rate was less than 50%. The conversion rate decreased to 13% between 5 and 9 feet. In a season where she attempted the 3rd highest number of layups in the WNBA, Her layup conversion rate of 31% indicates a serious inefficiency. Her offensive game has a structural issue that results in missed opportunities, which in turn contribute to some of the rebound totals she is given credit for. In the box score, the rebounds appear to be significant. The shots that made those rebounds possible reveal a very different picture of how her presence was actually boosting her team's offensive effectiveness. Meanwhile, Clark's production was producing effects that were completely absent from her own box score. And when you look past the obvious statistics, that's the aspect of the analytical picture that makes the comparison between these two players so biased. In order to avoid giving up open three-point shots from one of the league's most reliable long-range shooters, defenses throughout the WNBA were unable to relax. Kelsey Mitchell was able to take advantage of driving lanes that she would not have spotted against a traditional defense thanks to that defensive need. It cleaned up Aaliyah Boston's post-entry angles, which vanish when defenses don't have to respect the three-point line as they must against Clark. Two defenders were following Clark's movements without the ball, which frequently resulted in wide-open perimeter looks for Sophie Cunningham and Lexi Hull. She was diverting defensive focus from teammates who were poised to shoot while standing in free space. No single stat line reflects that type of gravitational offensive impact. It is not present in Clark's shooting percent, assists total, or points per game. Indiana's win totals show that. Every opponent coaching staff had to create a defensive game plan prior to playing Indiana. The assist totals of Clark's teammates, who were receiving easier looks than they would on any other team in the league, demonstrate this. Along with the individual performance figures, the All-WNBA Selection Committee assesses precisely that type of systemic influence. They are examining how a player's presence affects the offensive and defensive performance of the entire team. Additionally, Clark's impact on Indiana's operations in the first year was so great that the committee unhesitatingly selected her first team. Snorts, the commercial world was keenly observing the availability dimension, which added another depth to the comparison. During her second season as a professional, Reese's injury problem spanned months of ambiguous daily reports with no clear medical schedule associated to any of them. While still officially classified as sidelined by the Chicago Sky, she made public appearances at promotional events for her Reebok line at that same period. In contrast, the companies monitoring both players for long-term investment decisions were aware that you were publicly advertising a shoe contract while your team listed you as unavailable to play basketball. Businesses and individuals who behave transparently in trying circumstances gain the trust of business partners. A completely distinct kind of signal is produced by companies and individuals who stay publicly engaged for business purposes while creating uncertainty about their availability. Throughout the season, Indiana communicated Clark's health issues in a timely and detailed manner. Those that were paying attention were aware of the behavioral differences between the two organizations. When the new CBA compensation figures were made public, the Epic Clause essentially created the first formal document in the Clark-Reese case that neither side could recast through a media narrative. It's not a piece of opinion. It's not a hot opinion from an agenda-driven commentator. It is not a ranking based on interaction data or fan voting. Both parties to the WNBA's labor negotiations agreed in writing to this contractual result, which was produced by a performance algorithm. And when Reese viewed that document, her response disclosed something crucial about how she deals with failure as well as what she knows and doesn't know about the mechanism that generated the figure she is responding to. The $178,000 base salary difference between Clark and Reese becomes practically insignificant when you expand the frame to include what's happening concurrently in the endorsement market, so the endorsement picture must be fully presented before we delve into that response and its commercial implications. The CBA figures are accompanied with a comparable financial gap that is expressed in tens of millions rather than thousands. Nike looked at Clark's two-season career trajectory before making a choice that wasn't based on the number of times her name trended, the size of her social media following, or the engagement rate. They looked at retail merchandise velocity, television ratings, movement over her first two professional seasons, and arena attendance statistics. They examined whether her brand was indeed selling goods at a volume and speed that warranted a long-term wager. An 8-year, $28 million footwear collaboration was the outcome. Since Michael Jordan, Nike has been in the business of finding commercial assets that appeal to different generations. They have almost 40 years of data on the appearance of those athletes at the beginning of their commercial careers. They are aware of the indications. They are aware of the distinction between a player who attracts attention and one whose name genuinely influences consumer behavior on a large scale. They committed to an 8-year relationship and examined 2 years of Clark's professional records. That isn't an experiment in marketing. That is a firm wager from the most advanced shoe company in professional sports history. Gatorade didn't only sign Clark to a typical endorsement agreement. Their collaboration is reportedly worth $50 million. Around her, they created a trademark flavor line, Rainbow 3. When the rainbow bottles went on sale, they sold out so quickly that the sellout velocity created a distinct news cycle unrelated to anything basketball-related. For athletes who are popular on social media, Gatorade does not create distinctive flavors. They base them on sportsmen whose names produce demonstrable consumer demand at a velocity and scale that their distribution system is able to track in real time. Clark's name does just that, according to the sellout. Furthermore, even the most bullish internal estimates Gatorade had created prior to launch were shocked by how quickly the product sold, according to sources familiar with the promotion. Compared to Nike or Gatorade, State Farm approached the collaboration quite differently. With more than a century of advertising experience, the business has been creating national advertising campaigns since 1922. They never ever signed a female athlete to anchor their brand nationwide, despite every significant cultural transition in American sports and media, including the emergence of television, the cable era, the internet age, and the social media revolution in consumer marketing. A century-long run came to an end when Clark's audience data hit their desk. After looking at the commercial data associated with Clark's name, a corporation that had spent more than a century building its advertising identity in one manner decided to take a different approach. State Farm isn't a fashionable company looking to go viral. Actuarial forecasts are used by this insurance firm for all of its operations. Actuaries update a 100-year-old advertising campaign because they have no other logical option based on the numbers. Around Clark, Wilson Sporting Goods created a whole signature line. Michael Jordan was the final athlete in their history to have that particular treatment. Michael Jordan is not another active WNBA player, nor is he a current NBA franchise player garnering championship-level attention. Wilson felt that Clark's commercial pull justified doing what they last did for the most commercially dominating athlete in professional basketball history after looking through their complete catalog of brand agreements spanning more than a century of history. More information about Clark's true market position can be gleaned from their internal comparison and subsequent actions than from any specific compensation figure, ranking, or media title. In the history of women's basketball, this portfolio, which includes Nike, Gatorade, State Farm, and Wilson, represents an unprecedented degree of concurrent brand commitment. There were alternatives for every brand on the list. Each of them assessed the pitch and selected Clark. The business community does not base collective choices worth $100 million on social media data or opinion. It bases them on information. Additionally, the market's reaction to Clark's name throughout the course of 2 professional seasons was unprecedented in women's basketball. Reebok arrived to a different conclusion. They developed distribution infrastructure around the product, signed Reese, put serious marketing effort into the launch, and carried out a campaign with true promotional drive. After that, they saw the shoe remain on store shelves for months without selling at the rate necessary to cover the cost. Quietly, the marketing budget started to decline. The commercials ceased to run. While Reebok remained largely mute about the promotion, the sneaker shifted into a discounted retail stance. When partnerships are successful, brands don't let campaigns go quiet. They spend more money. They increase their momentum. They make announcements about new products. Instead of placing the athlete in fewer advertisements, they place them in more. In the world of endorsements, silence is hardly a neutral signal. The marketing team is directly informed by the sales statistics that the investment is not yielding the desired return for the brand. For some time now, the business community has been interpreting that signal from the Reese-Reebok scenario. One of the clearest market judgments accessible in the current WNBA endorsement scene is the partnership's public trajectory, which went from launch enthusiasm and sincere promotional zeal to retail markdown and organizational silence. Furthermore, it wasn't the result of bad timing or bad luck. It occurred because Reebok learned something about Reese's name value from the customer data that the launch energy had initially hidden. Clark came in at number 4 on Forbes' ranking of the most influential women in sports. Brand impact measurements and income creation data form the foundation of that ranking. It's not a vote by fans. It is not a measure of social media activity. It is a data methodology used in commercial production. Using the same data-first methodology, Sportico rated her the most influential female athlete of 2025. The reason Clark shows so high on both lists at the same time is that her name actually has such high commercial numbers. It wasn't a courtesy placement for her to be seated in the front row of a Prada runway show alongside cultural icons working at the pinnacle of fashion. At that level, fashion houses give front row seats to those who sell the brand's merchandise and create press. Clark's cultural influence has reached areas that are completely unrelated to basketball, which is why she deserved that seat. Anyone who has followed this rivalry since college will notice a pattern in Reese's public reaction to the Forbes rating and the Prada moment. Her responses during the Iowa-LSU portion of this story were characterized by the same public contempt that persisted unchanged into the professional period. Because they perform sentiment analysis on how an athlete's public behavior influences the perception of the brands that are commercially linked with them, brands specifically monitor that behavioral trend. They assess whether an athlete's public actions eventually result in responsibility. They consider professionalism, stability, and the capacity to deal with competitive hardship in a way that makes long-term investments seem secure. For the better part of 2 complete professional seasons, Reese's performance on that particular statistic has consistently been bad, and the commercial world has been subtly shifting its positioning around that reality. Commercial decision-makers are aware of other data points beside the Reebok condition, which is the most obvious to the general public. Every time Reese has started a public altercation in the last 2 years, Clark's reaction has been essentially the same. Play basketball at a level that results in all WNBA selections, represent Team USA, keep forming brand alliances, and conduct interviews that support the perception of a rival who is solely concerned with output and performance. That uniformity in behavior isn't coincidental, and it goes beyond effective public relations. It is a quantifiable and distinct business asset. Companies that make $50 million and 8-year commitments need to be certain that the individual to whom they are tying their identity won't cause liability events that harm their reputation. They must be confident that the athlete they are investing in will deal with hardship in a professional manner, maintain performance focus in the face of public pressure, and avoid putting their brand in embarrassing situations where it is associated with a controversy for which they did not sign up. That question is satisfactorily and consistently addressed by Clark's public record. Every time Reese has tried to start a public altercation, Clark has replied by doing something on the floor or in the endorsement market that demonstrates precisely the traits her brand partners are looking for. Reese's public conduct over the course of 2 professional seasons has been observed by sponsors who are currently assessing her commercial potential. Every comment she makes in public is recorded. Each of them either strengthens or weakens the brand dialogue she is trying to have next.